We have made it. Ladies and gentlemen, LightsThunderAction will be on right after this song.
What you looking for? Listen, Thor is lovesick. Not looking for you to just hop up on my dick. Wanna get to know you and explore you and see where it go. Friends, maybe more, baby. Thor is cool with
whatever you find you wanting. We can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking? Whatever you find you wanting. We can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking?
Okay, here's the deal, baby, let's do it. Let's talk about it like adults and maybe prove it. You tell me how you feel and I listen to it. An empathic life I live, so I just do it. Wanna know your dreams and help you achieve them. Wanna comfort you anytime you bleed. And let's watch a movie, stay up talking, sleeping. Ecstasy in the morning, I'ma have you creaming. See, I'ma treat you right, cause my life hasn't been kind to me. So pay no mind on my pain from the past is my bane. And I have to let go of my failures or end up insane. With my last couple relationships, yeah, they went bad. And I had to get out the slump, so I went and slept around a bunch. End up feeling like a chump and my heart is empty. Cause this pain, no reprieve. Girl, I just hope you believe in me, cause
whatever you find you wanting, we can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking? Whatever you find you wanting, we can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking?
Listen, I understand I maybe just blew it. Women want confidence and I'm here to prove it. I tell you these fears so you can see through it. Talking about my heart, unconditional, you knew it. Any secret you have is always safe with me. Anytime I see you, yeah, all I feel is glee. When we are together, it is electricity. Anything you set your mind to, I know you will succeed. All the dudes before me, girl, yeah, I think they knew it. I think they knew that you're a queen and that is why they blew it. Never could keep up with you and ran off and said screw it. Only looking for the cut and thinking with the unit. I'm looking to get in each other, yeah, we're talking deep. Understand the pain and joy, I know it won't be cheap. We talking about soul bonding and the rewards that it reap. I know it is scary, but come on, baby, let's leave.
Whatever you find you wanting, we can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking? Whatever you find you wanting, we can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking? Whatever you find you wanting, we can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking? Whatever you find you wanting, we can sleep together often, or explore each other's hearts with love in the future. What we talking?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, June 14th, 2021. Welcome to episode 60 of Lights Thunder Action, where every week two Thunder buddies discuss all things Marvel, Star Wars, DC, and the latest happenings in the entertainment industry. I'm Thomas Carter Rochester.
And my name's David Thompson. And today we are interviewing author, photographer, journalist, T. Rob Brown. He is coming up in just one moment today. We are so excited to be interviewing him. We love doing interviews. But before we get to him, Thomas, what do you got for me?
As you know, every week we're live streaming directly into your homes and phones via Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Yes, that's all of us? I think so. You can, I think so. Our Facebook page, our Twitter, our Twitch, which you will get those links on your screen here. Bam! He did it late. Bam! We got there. As well as the HWWS Facebook page, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Yes, we are everywhere, 7 places at once. Multicast, if you will. We feel fancy. And that's the live show. You get to see our faces. You get all these visual extras that I love. But if you don't want to look at our ugly mugs, David, where can everyone listen to our beautiful voices?
Yes, you guys can find the audio version of this live show podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and our hosting site Spreaker. We're on a few other feeds and platforms where you can find your audio podcast. If you cannot find us on an audio platform where you listen to podcasts, please let me know, and I'll try to fix that and get us on that platform because we want to be everywhere for you guys to listen to at your easiest convenience. So if you're going for a run, driving your car, missed the live show, wanted to catch up and listen to the rest of it later, go find our audio podcast, please. If you want to, feeling generous, please go follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star, leave us a review. We really appreciate all of that. We did change to a new feed recently, so look out for that. The episodes, I think from maybe 54 on, they're only going to be on the new feed, so check that out. Obviously, right now, me and Thomas have bumped it. This is our second week of doing 2 a week. Interview earlier in the week, and then our Loki specials later. So look out for that. Plenty of content down the pike. Thomas, how you doing today, man? Right before we get to our guest.
It's a case of the Mondays, my friend.
It's
a case of the Mondays. I just got to be honest. It's been a bad day for my car. I spilled buffalo sauce all over the middle console while door dashing. And then right after, I'll show the pictures in the future, but right after I spilled tea, half of it into my cup holder. So now I just have towels sitting in there. It's been a Monday, man. It had a great weekend, though.
Same.
Did I watch stuff? Yeah, I watched Star Wars Rebels. David, why aren't you watching it? Come on. Alrighty then.
Never ends.
David, it's never gonna end. Not until you watch it. David, how you doing, bro?
Doing good. Had an okay day. It's a Monday. Had a fun long weekend. Didn't get a lot of sleep last night, unfortunately, so I've been tired today, but happy to be here now. Right now is some of the bright spot of my day. Tomorrow's my birthday, so I'm excited for that.
Happy day of birth. Happy day of escape from the womb. Oh, that's not bad.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so it's been a case of the Mondays for sure, but I am very, very happy to be here.
I forgot to say really quick, you had a fun weekend. I had a fun weekend. My mom, my sister, my nephews came into town. I got to see them. David, we saw Cruella, and it blew my mind. And I totally forgot until this right moment. And we also went swimming yesterday, so I had a great weekend. Do you want my quick review of Cruella?
3-sentence review.
Okay, number 1, Wink the dog is the greatest character in that movie. I'll fight and I will kill over this point. Number 2, what would we do without Horace? What was my third? I don't actually remember. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Finally, the actual number 1. It wasn't supposed to be Wink. Sorry, Wink. I love you, but you're number 2. The soundtrack makes this movie so much better than it would have been without. Because it's a good story. Don't get me wrong. But every time they go to do something, they hook you with just a familiar song that you know that's done in a slightly different way, just like the story of Cruella. So, bravo. And on a future episode, we'll discuss the sequel again that's been greenlit, and I'll tell you what I think should happen.
All right. Looking forward to
that. And according to my Twitter, I should do this more. So, really quick, before we go, we'll jump right into our ads right now. Got bills to pay. You can go to Suncoast Fan Fest if you live in the Florida area. It'll be in Bradenton, September 24th through the 26th. And you can use the HWWS WebTV promo code for this event. It is Hangin21 at suncoastfanfest.com when purchasing tickets to get 10% off your tickets. Again, Hangin21, suncoastfanfest.com, 10% off your tickets. We'll be right back.
J. Bauer Art has the graphic design skills you need to develop your next logo and at an affordable price. But he's not just a one-trick pony. Follow J. Bauer Art on social media to interact during live paintings and see all of his previous artwork, which you can buy exclusively at jbauerartshop.com. Not only is he an artist, this beautiful son of a blue brings you the Back Talk with Bauer podcast every week with unique guests. And every month, he hosts a special Back Talk with Friends episode that can only be described as chaotic and hilarious. Need a video intro or commercial? J. Bauer Art has you covered. For all of this and more, follow J. Bauer Art on social media. That's JBAUERART. Check out jbauerart.com for a full portfolio and jbauerartshop.com to buy that special painting for you and your loved ones.
A small town coroner has to team up with her ex-fiancé to save her town from a swarm of mutant honeybees. There's action, drama, humor, maybe even a flamethrower or two. There's definitely a ton of bad bee puns and a very unlikely Hawaiian-wearing hero, dude. This classic sci-fi feature Cheese Fest is written and directed by Alicia Marie and starring local talent from the Emerald Coast. And we invite you to join our journey from conception to reception by visiting Linktree.com/Zombies the Movie to keep up with all the buzz and donate to our GoFundMe campaign. Zombies the Movie, coming soon. And we're back. Bees! 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 We got there. Tommy Boy reference for you people older than David. But it's time. You're not here for us. No, you are here because of our guest. Our guest is the assistant professional of visual communication at Texas A&M University. He teaches photography, journalism, and entertainment media courses of comic book writing, storytelling for video games. And he's also done something for Star Wars Hero's Journey, which we're going to dive into because it's Star Wars. He's also the lead faculty advisor for the Bridge Student Newspaper and advisor to the Anime Club. That's David's favorite, Rob Brown.
How's it going? Can you hear me okay? I wasn't sure if my mic was good.
Yeah. You sound beautiful.
Really? Okay, because it's just nothing. It's just a laptop.
No, it sounds good. It sounds better than some other people's laptops, let me tell you.
Yeah, well, it's a work laptop, so yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
the job done, let's say.
Yeah.
How you doing, sir? How you doing today?
Doing all right. I actually just left the comic book writing class. We get out about 4:45 in the afternoon Central Time, and so I just got home a few minutes ago. So
man, where was that when I was in college? That sounds amazing. That sounds like such a
I developed the class because I teach in the communication department, and we teach media studies. But too often, most universities focus on the legacy media. So, so newspapers, television, radio, magazines, the stuff that you usually expect. But I wanted to offer something a little different for students who wanted to teach in alternative media or entertainment media.
Yeah, no, that sounds,
I'm a fan of it myself. And I'd worked on a couple different books for Marvel and a couple different books for Star Wars. So
yeah, that sounds so cool. I mean, as someone who not even a year ago graduated with a journalism degree, fresh out of a communications program, I mean, there is something a bit stagnant, I think, about some of the coursework where it's kind of similar. And in some ways it's good because it's kind of connected. And you see, like, my specific degree is in multi-platform journalism, where it's a focus kind of on audio, video, writing, trying to kind of make you well-rounded. But it would have been fun to maybe hop in a more creative class like that, as it sounds.
Okay, there it is.
So you also, I wanted to ask you, you also run or advise the Anime Club. How big is that? How does that work?
Well, there was already an Anime Club when I first started it, TMU, which it's Texas A&M International. We're in Laredo. We're part of the Texas A&M system. And so we're right on the border with Mexico. So I have a lot of students that are actually Mexican students and a lot of students that are American students or Americans of Mexican descent or whatever. And so, it's really interesting. But The food here is great too, especially if you love Tex-Mex or Mexican food, because you get really good stuff here. But anyway, like the tamales here are amazing and everything else. But
I need to
there's
move.
their own breakfast burritos called Los Mariachis, which means the mariachis are the musicians. But they're breakfast burritos with eggs and chorizo and other things in them, which is cool. But anyway, so I came here, and in 2017 is when I started teaching here, and they did not yet. They had an anime club, but they had another advisor, and I guess that advisor left or whatever. And I had one of the anime club students in my class, and they were like, "Well, you're into all of this Marvel and Star Wars and everything." They're like, "How'd you like to be the anime club advisor?" And I'm like, "I like me some Studio Ghibli. I'm all over this, you know." So I joined up. I'm not the biggest anime aficionado, but I do enjoy it. And there's a lot of shows. I've watched a ton of Rama 1/2, and of course, everybody's watched a lot of the Adult Swim stuff, you know, like Full Metal Alchemist and things like that. So I'm pretty familiar with a lot of it, but not maybe the obscure stuff.
Yeah. Speaking personally, I actually have been slow to get into anime, but just recently I've kind of actually watched a couple of shows. I just finished the show, or not completely finished, but finished the first arc of Death Note. Have you, Death Note?
No, I actually was a little late getting on the My Hero Academia one, so I'm just now in first season watching that. So
Yeah,
I'm a little late to that one.
That's actually, it's on my list. My friends all say, like, a lot of my friends are already like very deep into anime. I've watched a lot of, one of my friends watched like over like 130 shows. It's crazy, and has a full list of branding and stuff. Yeah. So I'm really a newbie to it all. You know, so we can probably relate on that probably a little bit. But My Hero, all my friends say that I would love it because it's superheroes. Basically, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you are the superhero guy. Like, you'd love this show." I tried it out before I was into anime, and I didn't latch on to it. But now Death Note is really good. It's from like 2006, 2007. It's kind of a shorter anime show, and it's excellent in my opinion. It's a really good one. But that's so cool. I mean, I don't even think where we went to school there was an anime club. There might have been. It was smaller. There was. Yeah, I wouldn't have been in it because I wasn't into it then. But I think it's just awesome to have communities, especially in college, where, like, I mean, me and Thomas had our own 2-person club where me and Thomas, we met actually working at the gym where we went to school, and we just found the common interest of comic books and Star Wars, and just like made our own little club.
We're friends from work, is what he's saying. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's very important. I think just to kind of share thoughts and ideas, and I honestly I wish I had you as my professor.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I enjoy it a lot. It's a lot of fun. And like I said, I started developing new classes because when I came here, I was teaching photography and journalism, and I was teaching another course called media writing. And my department chair said, "Hey, you work for these Marvel books and these Star Wars books. Is there something else you can kind of do?" And so the first course I came up with was storytelling for video games. And I spent years running a game server for Neverwinter Nights for my own intellectual property called the Brood Slayers. And so anyway, I ran that for years and years. And that's where a lot of the characters and the development for the novels and the screenplays and stuff come from. And so anyway, so that was kind of a big deal. And through that, I learned a lot about game design because you build your own levels, you even do the coding and the scripting and all kinds of stuff. So then I taught a course in that. And that was pretty well received. And then I thought, well, what about comic books? Everybody loves comic books, and I'd worked for Marvel, so let's kind of put something together for that. And work directly for Marvel, but it was officially licensed work. Right. It was actually Margaret Weiss Productions. This is the core book. It was based off the Civil War. This came out in 2012.
Yeah.
And it's the Marvel Heroic Role Playing. I just found out they actually are doing a friend of mine, Matt Forbeck, is designing the new Marvel role-playing game that's getting ready to release. And actually Marvel's creating it themselves in-house. And he's working for them. He's a long-time game designer, so he's a good choice for it. He's worked on tons of Marvel and DC projects. And then I wrote for the Young Avengers and Runaway supplement, which continues with their storyline throughout Civil War.
That's so
they're
cool.
They're full color, pretty cool stuff. And then, like I said, I worked on Star Wars.
Did I freeze? Did he freeze? Did I freeze? Hello.
Oh, there we go. Could you guys see me, or did it cut out?
I'm not 100% sure.
I see you, but I don't see the other guy. He's
Yeah,
not on my screen.
David just dropped out. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
He's back.
Maybe I don't know if it was him or if it was me or what.
I'm
and
not
then
sure.
I saw him for a second. Anyway, and then this was the next one I worked on, which was called Galaxy of Intrigue, and it's all about like spies, infiltrators. Which was fortunate for me. I was a huge fan of the show Burn Notice, so it was a big influence on this. I'm writing the adventures for this, and so there's one adventure that if you play it, if you're a Burn Notice fan and you remember the pilot episode where he gets burned right in the middle of the transaction, that's it. That something very similar happens in one of the pieces in there, and so it was very inspired by Burn Notice. So yeah, but yeah, we got to write about spy and infiltrator ships and all kinds of really cool Star Wars stuff that you've never seen on the big screen or whatever.
Before, I know Tom's is gonna want to ask you about Star Wars and everything else, everything else you just laid out for us. I kind of wanted to ask just for our audience and for us, kind of like your background. Where did you start, and like kind of your beginnings in journalism, photography, writing, and kind of how you got to be where you are now, working at the university?
Okay, well, I actually started off with journalism in high school, so that's way back, and studied photography and writing and everything. And then I knew that that's what I wanted to do, so I went to college for that. I went to Missouri Southern. I worked for the Chart newspaper there, and it was a prestigious, like, pacemaker-winning newspaper, which is really competitive. And we had a lot of great journalists come from there. Some of them went on to work for AP and large newspapers and stuff like that. And so anyway, so I worked there, and then I got a job I worked out in Kansas at a newspaper there in Junction City, Kansas. It was I started there the day after my last final. I already had my job lined up. It's hard to do that anymore because the job market's a lot tougher than it was back then. But anyway, it took me 2 years to get this position after I graduated with my master's degree. So it takes a while. And so anyway, so I worked in various different daily newspapers. Meanwhile, I was writing a lot of fiction for myself, not really publishing anything in those early days. But spent a lot of time, writing different novels, short stories, different things like that, and played a lot of role-playing games, a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of Star Wars role-playing game. Back then, I was playing the old West End D6 system, which was a lot of fun. And at one point, I had almost 100 books in that system until the tornado, which we'll get to that later. There's foreshadowing. Anyway, so I worked for a lot of different daily newspapers throughout the Midwest. And then I got on I worked for the Branson Daily News. I don't know if you've heard of Branson. They tout themselves as the live entertainment capital of the world. Kind of a fun place, but especially if you're into country, which I'm not, but more of a rock guy. So, but anyway, so I worked there for a while. I was the photo editor at the Branson paper for like 3 years, and then I got on at the Joplin Globe, which is one of the 4 or 5 larger newspapers in the state of Missouri. And I worked there. I was the chief photographer there for 13 years. And while I was working there, I started going to Gen Con every year because I was a big gamer. My buddies, we always played D&D every weekend or some other role-playing game, board game, card game, played tons of Magic the Gathering, all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm very, very inundated in geek culture. We watch all the geek shows. And so, so me and my buddies, that's what we were all into.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I was at Gen Con and I wanted to do something. I wanted to freelance, work on these game books. And I spent a lot of time talking to different people like Chris Perkins, and I would take writing classes with Michael Stackpole, who wrote a lot of Star Wars books and did game design on the original Wasteland, which we all know is Fallout today, and just tons of stuff like that. So I took a lot of classes, and so that went on for like 10 years. But during that time, I kept asking, trying to get a chance to freelance, and nothing really happened. And then they had a job opening at Wizards of the Coast, which is who owns Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, but they own Dungeons and Dragons. And they had an opening for an editor to edit the Dungeons and Dragons book. So I applied for that, and I'm pretty I may not sound like it in spoken language, but in written language, I'm kind of a guru with grammar and spelling and all of that. So I passed the editing test, and I got a phone interview, and they interviewed me. So I got down not to the final finalists, but to a group of finalists. And then I was on the phone with Christopher Perkins, who at the time I think he was the creative director. I think now he's like the head of Wizards of the Coast. He's been promoted since then. But he and the other people that I talked to, one of them was one of the head of the editing team and all of that. And I spoke to them, and we kind of hit it off on the phone, and they were really nice people. At the time we were talking a lot about Game of Thrones. This was back way before the TV shows. This is because they were like, well, what kind of fantasy have you been reading? And I'm like, oh, I'm in the second or third book of Game of Thrones now. And they're like, who's your favorite character? And I'm like, oh, I love Tyrion Lannister because nobody expects anything out of him. He does all these things that nobody expects, you know? And so we got into that, and they were like, oh, that's cool that, you read something other than just D&D or whatever, and because it's important to branch out when you're a writer, to read lots of different things.
Right.
And so I read Westerns, even though I don't write Westerns. Well, I've got a friend that's a Western novelist too. But anyway, so I was talking to them, and I ended up not getting the editor job. But as a consolation, they were like, well, we were really impressed with your stuff. How'd you like to freelance for us? I'm like, okay, this wasn't a waste of my time. I got something out of it, Yeah. So they hired me on to work for a couple Star Wars books, and I wrote for those. And then they ended the Star Wars license with Wizards of the Coast. And that's around the time, because I worked on these books in 2009 and 2010. And then the Star Wars license went away. It went over to Fantasy Flight Games. And I applied there, but they never offered me a position on the Star Wars writing team. But I was still fairly new. I'd only done a couple books, so I was still kind of a rookie, And then the tornado happened in 2011, so I didn't really have anything that year. And then I went to Gen Con in 2011, and I was talking to the people at Margaret Weiss Productions, and I'd already known some of them from years at Gen Con. And they're like, yeah, you worked on the Star Wars books, no problem. We need some more people to work on these with some experience to write on the new Marvel books that are coming out. And so, I ended up getting hired up to work on Civil War, and then to work on one of the supplements for Civil War. So,
so cool.
And then a couple years after that, I ended up going back to school to work on my master's. I wrote a screenplay, just all kinds of stuff, and keeping super busy. And then coming here, learning a whole new job. And so it took a couple years. I was freelancing for the Kansas City Star as a photographer, and I was working for the IRS of all things between my master's and getting my job here. And I was also an adjunct at a community college there, MCC, Metropolitan Community College in Independence, Missouri, which is a suburb of KC. And so I was working like 3 jobs at the same time. I was like working at the Star on the weekends as a photographer, and then during the week I was working 2 jobs. I was full-time at the IRS and an adjunct teaching 3 courses a semester at MCC. So I was working like a lot of hours. And so it was kind of a relief to get this. I still work a lot of hours, but it's a little more flexible, and I can kind of, other than the scheduled classes, I can kind of work when I need to. Everything else as far as grading papers and things like that.
Yeah, that sounds, I've always been interested in, or at least like thought of being interested in eventually in like a professing or like some sort of like teaching job, especially in like upper like university level, college level classes where you can talk like you have those kind of more niche media courses, and you know you're dealing with people that are there to learn, they're paying to learn, so they're gonna mostly want to or interested in the classes because you have kind of more freedom. So what did you get your master's degree in?
I got my master's also in communication with a focus in filmmaking and photojournalism.
Cool.
So I got that from Pitt State, which is the Gorillas there in Southeast Kansas, in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Very cool.
So it's Pittsburgh State University is the full name, but yeah.
Thomas, do you have anything to ask about Star Wars?
From one Thomas to another. The T in my name does stand for Thomas, by the way.
Yes, I knew it.
Wondering, I bet. Yeah, I get that question a lot. What's the T stand for? My first name's actually Thomas.
I knew it. I was like, wow, who with a T name would shorten it to just T? A Thomas would. That's a Thomas move right there. That's a very Thomas move. Like, that's a long name.
Level, I like Thomas better than Theodore, but yeah.
True. But they can go by Ted.
Yeah, true.
And then
Ted's not
you get to
bad.
make
Ted's
Pepperidge.
definitely better than Theodore, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to make Pepperidge Farm jokes the whole time. So you talked about, working with Star Wars a little bit, and how, you wrote for these campaign games, correct? Like role-playing games?
It's for the Star Wars role-playing game. So like this is Star Wars Galaxy of Intrigue here, and it's an expansion for the Star Wars role-playing game. It was called the Saga Edition, which was published by Wizards of the Coast, which is a division of Hasbro. What now?
I love that cover.
Oh, I know. It's definitely intrigue there. The Sith getting ready to return and the Phantom Menace. Yeah. So so for this, we write like sections on different things. So like I wrote on one of the sections where we talked about like different organizations, like the Imperial Security Bureau, the ISB, who they're basically the ones that keep all the secrets. They're the spies for the Empire, or things like the Naboo resistance movement and the Kashyyyk resistance movement. So I got to write about those. And then I wrote several adventures for this. They have like one big adventure and then several like small adventures that are like 4 pages long, but literally you could spend about 4 hours playing one of these adventures at the game table. So this is for, tabletop role playing where you're rolling dice and you have character sheets. And
it seems like it's like a perfect combination based on your background where you love D&D and then, but on the other end, journalism degree, writer, it's like a perfect like, kind of combination that led to the creation of these.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things is I wanted to do some writing in addition to journalism and photojournalism. I wanted to do something a little outside of that was a little different, that kind of clung to my hobbies, if you will. So I kind of turned my hobbies into like a side profession, basically. So
that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I had some friends who ran a podcast for a while. What was the name of theirs? The Agreeable Brains was the name of it, and a couple of them ran it. I don't think they do it anymore, but they did it for years. And I was guest on there a couple of times. It's a lot of fun, But I wasn't a professor then. I didn't have quite as much to talk about, as I do now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're literally like the king of comics knowledge right now when it comes to who's been on our show.
I would say I'm the king of comics knowledge. There's a lot I don't know. There's so much to know about comics. I mean, I'll watch, like, I've watched every episode of Comic Book Men, and there's some things on there they say, and I'm like, wow, how did they know that? Where did that knowledge come from? And then you'll have, of course, Stan Lee pop on there because these are older shows back when he was still alive. And he would pop on there and give you some piece of wisdom that you'd never heard before as a comic book fan. And you're like, whoa, but it came from Stan Lee, so it's true. Like he was on there one time talking about how he didn't consider Dr. Doom to be a villain. And I was like, what? Whoa, I got to hear the explanation on this. And he goes on to explain how Dr. Doom just wanted to take over the world. And he said, if you go up to a police officer and say, hey, I want to take over the world, he goes, they can't arrest you for that. That's not illegal. And I was like, I guess that's true, only from the mind of Stan Lee, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just, man, we lost a great one when he passed, but
we did. We did. We were a part of CyberCon, David and I, last year in 2019. It was one of the first all online conventions. We did it telethon style. It was the HWWSWebTV presents CyberCon, 56 straight hours of content. We found out that Facebook will kick you off the air after 8 hours. They don't care. So that's fun to know in case you ever want to do a telethon online. But we actually had like a memorial for Stan Lee. One of the people involved, Mark Lee, knew him. He'd interviewed him at Dragon Con a couple times, and he presented a video, and it was like our tribute to him. Back to the comics really quick. Have you read, how caught up are you on the I'm gonna say comics. We'll just talk Star Wars. We ain't gonna lie. How caught up are you on like the High Republic? right now?
I have the first 5 issues. I have not read them yet. I have a big, huge, massive stack. I just picked up the alpha and the issue 1 of the War of the Bounty Hunters, so I'm anxious to read that. But I don't know. I'm a huge comic fan, but money is usually the issue. So I buy some for a while, and then I get so many, I'm like, yeah, can't buy any right now. Money's tight, and I got this big stack of comics to read that I haven't had time to read yet. Plus, developing this class and working on the class, it keeps me pretty busy. So I'm lucky if I get through a couple comics a week, and I'd love to read more, but time is limited sometimes.
I've got the same issue.
Priorities.
Yeah, like I get recommended something, or I'll see something online. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want that so much. It's on sale. I buy a book or a comic, and they just kind of like, when do I have time to read this exactly? And then you gotta find the time. You really gotta carve it out, especially if you got a busy schedule. And especially I think with the world reopening back up, and wanting to get back out there and doing things.
Well, we found out locally here that there's a lot more people running to the comic book stores to try to pick up the comics they missed, but it's too late to get some of those that came out during the pandemic if you didn't special order them or whatever. And
have you found
shops were closed?
Yeah. What kind of, I guess challenges did you face during the pandemic, or, it's still going on, with teaching? I mean, I know all professionals, all teachers.
Yeah,
elaborate on, no, that's pretty much the question. Just basically your experience with having to teach through all that.
Yeah, for me, it was mostly just learning new software because I was used to teaching face-to-face classes.
Yeah.
And in the middle of a semester, they suddenly went, we're going completely online with these classes. So we took an additional week at spring break. So we went home at spring break not this March, but the March before, of course, when the pandemic first hit locally. And we said, well, we were waiting for the administration to make a decision, like, what are we going to do here? And so there was talk of going, online or not. We were kind of waiting to see how it went. So they extended spring break from 1 week to 2 weeks last year. And that second week, what they did was they had all of the faculty run through training courses. And we went through, I think I went through 8 different training classes that I took throughout that week on how to use different pieces of software online to do online teaching. So we use Blackboard. A lot of universities use Canvas as well, but we use Blackboard, and I had to learn Blackboard Collaborate, which I'd never used before, so that I could do online teaching. And I know how to invite guests to the class and things like that. In fact, we're having a comic book artist this Thursday as a guest from Kansas, or from Joplin, not Kansas City. And then Matt Forbeck, who's actually the guy doing the new Marvel role-playing game, he's going to be a guest some point next week. We haven't hammered out the exact date, but he did say, he wanted to. So we're trying to finalize those details. Then I got a friend named Jeremy Hahn from Joplin, Missouri, who has written for Batman and Spider-Man and all kinds of stuff for Marvel. So there's a few people I know, which is kind of cool, those connections. So it was from my time when I lived there. I remember photographing Jeremy Hahn before he, back when he was kind of getting started. He was doing a lot of independent work, which was really cool. But there's so many talented people out there that it's really awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, even just doing this podcast, we've been able to talk to a lot of different people with different backgrounds and just so many creative folks, and I think a lot of times, this is kind of a generalist kind of mindset, but you always think about, big tentpole things like Marvel, DC movies, and these creators you fall in love with. And it's just amazing how, in the smaller projects and books and novels, comics, there's so many just incredibly talented and creative people out there. And it's I don't know.
That's mind-blowing, really.
It's crazy. It's crazy thing.
You don't realize it until you meet them.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, you meet someone and you see their work and it's just wow, this is I could never. I'm a terrible illustrator, artist like that. I can write words. Okay.
My artistic skills are all photography, but beyond that, I'm creative when it comes to writing and language, but Yeah, I can't draw a stick figure to save my life.
Yeah, same.
I just don't have that talent. For me to actually create my own comic book, I can do the script, but I need an artist who can do the other part, so, and work together as a team. So
yeah, and it makes you so much more like appreciative of those talents when you see it. It's like, oh my gosh, I could never do that in a million years. When someone makes like, especially the photorealistic drawings out there these days.
How about that? The Todd McFarlane Spider-Man stuff was phenomenal. I mean, the detail in that webbing, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody draw webbing detail like Todd McFarlane did. Just phenomenal stuff.
I've talked to some other, I know Thomas knows this on the podcast before. I've mentioned this, where when I'm reading a comic, I normally because I want to know what happens, I blow through it. I glance at the panels, I see what's going on. And then normally after I finish reading it, if it's taken me maybe a few sittings, depending on how long it is, I'll just go back over it. And because I want, I feel like oftentimes people in general, I don't know, anyone try to rush through things, get it done, move on to the next thing. It's like I really want to sit there and just appreciate these people's works of art, because it's like this really is art that took so much time, to every single little panel. I specifically, I was reading
that's the strength of the medium, is the visual.
Exactly.
And it's like I'm a professor of visual communication, and the emphasis in screenplays and in comic books is that these are visual media. And you have to approach it that way and realize that's the strength of the media. You know how you always hear that complaint, it was nothing like the book. It's like, it shouldn't be like the book. The book is not a visual medium. It's a mental medium. You can hear inside the characters' heads and all of that. And that's not to take away from novels. That's the strength of a novel. But the strength of a comic book is different. The strength of a screenplay or a film is different. And so each version of a particular media property needs to be different. They should never be exactly the same. And the people that complain about that just haven't studied it or haven't looked at it and realized you have to go with the strength of that media, or you completely forget what that media is all about. And for comics, it's very much those visuals. Yes, we need good story, good dialogue, good writing, but we also need those strong visuals, because that's what people are coming for. They want to see it.
Yes.
If they wanted to read a novel, they would go pick up the novel. This, the comic book of, let's say, George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones should be very different, even though the story is at its essential the same, but the artwork, they might be different depictions than what we would think of in our head when we read the novel.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people get held up because they read a book and then they see the movie. And I mean, sometimes they do, depending on the studio and how they actually develop it, some are better or worse. But oftentimes as people, when you read a book, you imagine everything pretty much. And comics, movies, they present that to you. So you talked about screenwriting a second there. I've never written anything near to a screenplay. I'm interested in it. I'm a huge movie fan. I like reading some scripts that come up online after the movies come out and stuff. What are some tips to writing screenplays just for our audience out there? And maybe even Thomas, I know he's interested in that as an actor.
All right. Well, what I do, the way I teach it, is I break it down. It's storytelling at its essential, and I break it down to the different things you have to do to prepare before you even sit down and write the script. So the first thing you need to do is build your world. You need world building. If you don't know what the world is, then you don't really know what the characters are going to be like, because we're a product in part of our environment and our society, right? So if you don't have the world first, where's everything else coming from? So first you sit down and design the world. Next, you design the characters. Who are the inhabitants of this world? Who fills it up? And you focus the most, of course, on your key characters. And I like to pick 2 or 3 key characters, but sometimes go into an ensemble piece if you're doing something along the lines of the Avengers or a D&D adventuring party or whatever, right? Because you need people that fill different roles, And so anyway, so you develop your characters, and it's important to know the difference between characters and characterization. They're not the same thing. Character is plot. It's the decisions that the characters make. They drive the story, and the characters should drive the story. That's how you avoid what's called Deus Ex Machina, which is the God in the machine. And it's where, like in the old, mythologies, Zeus would come down and the gods would come down and they would fix everything in the end. So no matter what the hero did, it didn't really affect the story. But in today's stories, we like the heroes to actually be the driving force, with the exception of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is kind of funny.
I was just going to bring that up.
I love Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's the only one where the events of the stories events of the story would have happened regardless of anything Indy did, which is kind of funny, but it's still a great piece of story because of the way Lucas and Spielberg told that story, the way it was filmed, the dialogue, the acting, everything else about the film is so great that we forgive it that one flaw and it still works. But unless you're Lucas and Spielberg, you don't want to rely on that, right? It's kind of like
not everyone.
If you're not Stephen King, you can't get away with what Stephen King gets away with, and if you're not George R.R. Martin, you can't get away with the things he gets away with, because they're masters of their craft and they're well respected, and they're going to have a flock of fans regardless, and they get to break the rules and bend the rules a little bit more than those of us who are breaking into the field or have only done a few things. We don't get to break the rules quite as much as they do. So anyway, so you develop those characters and then you study the plot. So the plot comes from the character decisions. So you have to have the characters first. Once you have the characters and then you have the plot, now you've got to put it all together, and you need to look at your overlying plots, your subplots, and all of that. So I go through and I break everything down, teach that, and then I teach the actual script writing format. Here's how you do dialogue. Here's how you do the captions and the narration in a comic book, and so on. For screenwriting, of course, you're writing scene descriptions. You do that as well for the panels in a comic book. So they're somewhat similar, except that in a screenplay, you're going to write sound effects as a SFX and kind of put them in that way. But yet you still use sound effects in comic books, but you kind of write out the sound of it, like screech, that the artist is going to put on there in cool, funky letters, kind of reminiscent of the old Batman 60s, bop, bam, but more modernized, right? We don't really do it that way anymore because that's kind of cliche. Yeah. But back then it was cool. That was kind of neat in the 60s, but now it's, but yeah, so the number one thing is to come up with a good story, but develop three-dimensional characters. That's the ultimate thing. No matter what storytelling format you use, you have to have good characters. Michael Stackpole once told me that writers are put into two classes: character-driven writers and plot-driven writers. And publishers want character-driven writers. So ever since he told me that, I've really focused on character development. I used to think it was all about the plots because I grew up reading Asimov and Tolkien and stuff, who are great writers, but they were back in the days where plot-driven writers were very common. Nowadays, we want character-driven writers. Read Game of Thrones. It's all about the characters. Sure, there's a great plot there too, but it's all about the characters. Every chapter is from a certain character's point of view, and that's how it's broken down. And we do that when storytelling with movies. We look at these things. It's all about the characters. People fall in love with characters, whether we kill them off or torture them as writers. But those are the things that we do, and then we make them the readers or the viewers come back for more.
I'll tell you, it feels like I should be taking notes.
You should be taking notes, but it's lucky that you have to edit the audio later.
So you can always look at it later.
Absolutely, I will.
You were talking about one of my classes online and get all the details. Right.
Okay. You were talking about characters, and that you got to care about the characters, and that no matter what you put them through, you come back for the characters. Marvel just did that with Loki. Have you seen episode 1 yet?
Yes. I don't miss a Marvel and MCU show.
Not either.
You fit right in here.
Yes. So, what are your thoughts on episode 1?
Central Time, like not long after it dropped. Yeah.
Me too.
I stay up all night just so I can watch that. I did the same thing with Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision. It's like, I can't wait for more Marvel. I love DC as well. Batman's like one of my top 3 favorite characters, but I kind of lean toward Marvel most of the time.
Yeah, I'm like almost right exactly there with you.
Yeah,
like, Batman,
I mean, they're both great. They're both great. And the people that argue over one or the other, that blows my mind because there's room for all in the world of comic books. It's like the Star Wars versus Star Trek. It's like you can love both. You don't have to only love one, They're different enough to enjoy them both, They fit within different spaces within your world.
Yeah, I think some of the debating can get a bit toxic, but I hope some of the
toxicity.
Yeah, I hope some of it, drives creativity and drives people, like each company, to try to get better.
Yeah.
That it should drive competition.
Yeah, competitive is what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you hope that as a consumer, that helps us out, because it makes them want to make better and better content.
Better art, we get better writing because they're competing to get the best writers in the market, and those writers are striving to be the best. When I was reading tips from both Stan Lee and Peter David on comic book writing, they said that you don't have to just be as good as the people out there. You need to be 4 to 10 times better than the people that are already out there. That's tough. There's some amazing writers out there.
Yeah.
And how do you get to be better than they are? You really have to practice, hone your craft, write a lot, read a lot. I mean, to be a better writer, you have to read. You can't get better without reading, but you also have to practice the art of writing. If you're not writing frequently, it's
I learned that the hard way with the reading part, because when I was younger, I had a hard time. Like I just wasn't quick to reading quickly. Just kind of took me a while.
And I'm in that boat too.
Yeah, and when I was young, so I was drawn to comic books, because then it's more visual, less words, right? Less daunting. Yeah. And I think as I got older, I hadn't picked up books as much when I was younger, and it kind of like hindered me a bit. And then when I got to a certain point, I think in high school, maybe like even my senior year, actually, I was like, I need to start like making myself read like actual like books, just because I know I need to get faster at reading, and just like kind of, it's the most simple thing. You hear it since like kindergarten, like you read more, you grow your vocabulary, you just get better at the English language, and it really does help. Like since then, I mean, like throughout college, I tried to read more, be more diligent about it, and it really does. I mean, you said it exactly right. It helps your writing like a lot, just seeing other people's styles, their voice.
Right.
It doesn't matter what, like mixing up. You said it earlier, like kind of you talking about reading different, I guess, like genres of novels.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even just like different articles, different websites these days. And I'm sure you maybe even thought about this or discussed this with your students. I feel like a lot of websites, a lot of news outlets, you're kind of seeing it in the same way, I guess, kind of like the same platform, and they're all kind of written very similarly. Yeah. I think it's fun.
There's a little difference between local news and national news, though.
Definitely.
But a lot of the national news are all very similar, and the local news is similar, but
and I was almost
vary depending on the market, because some of the local news is in a more conservative market, and then some of the local news is in a more liberal market. And so they kind of sometimes lean, they really shouldn't, but they kind of lean sometimes toward one or the other to cater to the viewership on television, or newspapers sometimes do a teeny bit of that in terms of leaning toward the readership. But there's actually a really cool bias chart. It was created by an attorney. I can't remember her name at the moment. But she has a whole series of them, and she updates it frequently. And it's a great thing if you don't know much about news media and you're wondering kind of where do these fall. And it's not exact science, but she's pretty close to where
I know what you're talking about.
Yes. And like the Associated Press, who I freelance for, they are right in the middle, right on one of the most accurate. Same thing with Reuters and a lot of the other news media, wire services, as we call them. And so they're usually really stable. And then the newspapers are mostly around there. And then it starts to stretch out. And then you've got, Fox off to the right, and you've got CNN off to the left. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it gets worse. And then you have, as you go down the chart, the news is less accurate.
Yeah.
It's filled more with opinion or errors as you get farther down. So like the National Enquirer is not really left or right leaning, but they're way down at the bottom in accuracy because they don't fact check anything, and they run a lot of weird stories that you can't, 3-headed baby grown in sewer. I mean, where can you verify that? Stuff that only Men in Black believe.
Yeah. So I had one more question before we head out for the night. What's your favorite, fiction's pretty broad. Your favorite, I guess, piece of fiction or like franchise, book series?
IP.
Like
Favorite IP.
IP.
Man, it's
That's good.
Overall, man, it's kind of like Star Wars #1, Spider-Man #2, I think, for me, and maybe Hulk #3, and then Batman #4. It's really hard to pinpoint that because it kind of depends on, they all have so many different iterations, because it's like it's like you say Star Wars, but then you go, well, but then there was this movie I didn't like, or there was this holiday special that was really bad, or whatever. And you're like, well, I do love Star Wars, but you can't say all inclusively that I love everything Star Wars. But 98% of it is #1 on my list, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's some things, that aren't quite so good. But, it's like that with anything. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, and people argue over stuff. And it's like, on a personal level, I just kind of, my personal thoughts, not personal level, but personal thoughts was, I wish that Lucasfilm had brought someone in like a Kevin Feige to organize the Star Wars Skywalker saga from the beginning, instead of went one episode at a time with a different director, different writers, and had no overall planning. Sure, they did that originally, but George oversaw all that. He was in charge of it. So it was all George. So you didn't need a Kevin Feige because you had George Lucas. But and I don't want to badmouth Kathleen Kennedy because she's done some great stuff too, but that kind of falls in her ballpark because she was the head of Lucas, or I guess she still is, but she's the head of Lucasfilm, so it kind of falls in her ballpark. But she's still a very talented woman. So
I think we can all, as Star Wars fans, I think we can all agree on that after the.
I was very disappointed with the way things ended, but it is.
On that topic, we
but
still
Mandalorian. Oh my gosh, Mandalorian! Can't talk enough positive about Mandalorian. I'm waiting for Book of Boba Fett. Oh man.
Oh
and I'm from his neck of the wood. He's from, I'm pretty sure, San Antonio, like just a couple hours north of here. Robert Rodriguez is working on the team for Book of Boba Fett. And he is one of the best action directors. If you've ever seen the Mariachi series, and he's directed a lot of films with Antonio Banderas, and it's just really good stuff. And I'm just so looking forward. He's the one that directed that episode where Boba Fett really shined against the Imperial remnants when they came down. So I'm really looking forward. Yeah, that was a tragic episode. Yeah.
It was so tragic. They blew up the ship.
Oh, I know.
I guess Baby Yoda got caught
made
too.
A lot of funny memes online with pictures of the Lego set, and they're like, "Hey, you don't even have to build it." But really bad. But yeah.
So to wrap this up, T-Rob Brown, I want to say that we're gonna have to get you back on when we actually go balls deep into the sequel trilogy. We discussed reviewing it.
And I have my own opinions on the prequels. What every writer, Star Wars fan is like, well, I would have done it this way. I still know that that's George's version. It's his creation, and I respect that. But we also go, oh, if I had been given the reins by George himself, this is what I would have done, and it's just fun speculation. It doesn't change anything, but
it's the best kind of speculation, the kind that doesn't matter.
That's right. It's just a waste of time and brain cells.
That's what we do here at LightsThunderAction. So where can everyone find you on social media or buy your products, and where can everyone sign up for your classes as well?
Okay, well, my classes are at Texas A&M International University. That's tamu.edu. So that's where you can sign up for the classes. The only thing is, I think in the fall we go back to face-to-face only. I don't know that there'll be online courses. So it'd have to be somebody living in the Laredo area or nearby to take the courses that time. They were online up until now. This is like the last one that was online, and it's too late to sign up for this one because we just started, I think are we in the second week now or third week? I don't know. I lose track. I think we just started week 3. This was Monday of week 3. Yeah. It still feels like it's only been 2 weeks because that Monday was a holiday. And so anyway, so there's that. I have an Amazon authors page. if you're looking for the Star Wars books or the Marvel books. I will warn you, they're kind of high now because they've been out of print for a while. But I don't sell them there. It's just buying from whoever sells them on Amazon. But there's links there if you're looking for those. What else? My website is t-rob.com. That's pretty easy. But it's old. It's very old school. I designed it like with WordPad back in the day, and then moved it to Dreamweaver. So it's pretty old school.
Yeah.
We actually here at LightsThunderAction,
what now?
we love your website.
Yeah.
By the way, we had a great conversation. We were like, dude, it's so easy to get around. It's so easy to navigate and find everything. It's like
Fun.
It's very old school, and it's so nice.
So I own. Let's see. I think I own SithEmpires.com. I'm pretty sure that's mine. I own like 12 web domains. So I have novels and stories I'm working on. And so I have I'm working on a photography book. I went to Peru, which is another fun thing to talk about. Went to Machu Picchu, which was mind-blowingly amazing for world traveling. I felt like Indiana Jones there, exploring these ancient worlds and these ruins. But yeah, so that one is called literally breathtaking.com. It's a photography book that I'm putting together on Peru, Cusco, and Machu Picchu. And so that's on my agenda for the near future, hopefully. I don't know how long it's going to take me to finish it. It's a lot of work when you do things by yourself. And then Animalian.com is a novel that I've been working on for a number of years. And then Broodslayers.com is where you can find a little bit of info on Rise of the Broodslayers, which is the screenplay that I completed and the novel that's fairly close to being finished. So, but I keep getting sidetracked with other have to do it now, more important stuff. When you're working on spec like that, it kind of gets put to the background, and you work on other projects and then keep coming back to it. But yeah, the world map on there is really cool. Let's see what else. I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff. There's
a lot going on.
Yeah, I think I have too many irons in the fire, and that's why I don't accomplish as much as I'd like to, because I'm like, oh, this is cool and that's cool, and I have one called FleetingBits.com. That's a screenplay and novel that I'm working on as well. It's So anyway, but that's where you kind of find
everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Everywhere.
I started working on a comic book version of a comic book script for the Rise of the Broodslayer. Since I have the screenplay done, it's not too bad but it really would have to be like a 10 or 12 issue miniseries to get it to work, because there's just too much. So I got to figure out how to break it down comic by comic, so I kind of end each comic on a really cool note that makes the reader want to come back to read the next one, So when you're planning out comics, that's a lot of what you got to do.
Absolutely. Well, T-Rob, thank you so much for joining us. This busy man has stuff to do tonight, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm just going to sit on the couch. I'm going to sit on the couch and go to bed. So it's going to be, that's my night right there.
I'll probably play a little Fallout 76. That's one of my little go-tos on the Xbox One. And I'll do some grading. I've got some grading to do for class.
Professor stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. We will definitely have you back on, because we always want to talk the sequel trilogy. So
all right, cool. Hey, and then there's the Machete Order, all kinds of fun stuff to talk about.
Yes. We're gonna drop you out. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night, brother. You as well.
Thank you so much,
David. That was an interview.
That was an interview. That was a blast.
That was so much fun. Really quick, we're gonna get David out of here because he's a busy man. Promotions, as you know, this entire next 6 weeks, we got the low-key specials on your screen now. Most important to remember, we will be back in 2 days. Thursday, June 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Direct, the Illuminerdis, the Mary Sues, Murphy's Multiverses, Julia Del Bell. She's also everywhere, and I'm probably saying her name wrong, and she's going to shoot me in the face, which, sure, deserve it. I'll learn how to say people's names. David, we're going to skip social medias. Everybody knows it'll be all right. Linktr.com/TCRochesterACT. David Thompson on Facebook, at David Thompson everywhere, pretty much. He's easy to find. He's a big deal. That's a show. As always, there could be no show without the Clark Kent doppelganger to my right, world-famous journalist David Thompson, bringing the news and spicy webs. Thank you to Terry McIver for his hard work behind the scenes with guests, socials, and research, without whom this show would be Bush League. You'd think I'd have that down by now, David. Thank you to HWWS for supporting us and carrying us on the network. Most importantly, thank you to you, our fans that join us weekly, whether you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube,
or listening via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or Spreaker.
We appreciate you spending your time with us.
Please like, follow, subscribe, drop us a comment, leave a review, and give us 5 stars if you're feeling generous. We really appreciate all of your support.
Yes, thank you for joining episode 60 of Lights, Thunder, Action. We don't have a cool exit, so
Bye, everyone.
yeah!